The film begins with a man climbing a mountain without any protections, but only his cheer, will, and bravery. However, he loses his grip and falls to his death. A befitting burial was performed for the deceased, attended by his friends and families. Nick, a private investigator, narrates that the dead guy happens to come from a rich family, known as the Vardakis. And the father just died recently. What was left was Elias, the twin brother to Leo, and his wife, Penelope, followed by Audrey, the mother to Leo and Elias. Nick arrives on the island, where Penelope introduces herself, saying that she needs him to work and discreetly investigate the death of her brother-in-law, Leo. She believes that the cause of death wasn't an accident, explaining that she would double his pay, plus free accommodation, just for him to uncover the case. Nick is taken to a monastery, where he'd be spending his days until he's done with the investigation. After settling, he grabs a bottle to drown himself from his own life crisis. Nick goes into town, where he bribes a police officer for some information on the death of Leo. Next, he meets with George Mensa, the detective in charge of the Vardakis case. He lies, saying he's from a global life insurance policy from the USA, posing as the head of investigation. He says he only wants to see the file reporting the case of Leo's death, pointing out that maybe someone in the family is unhappy with him and orchestrated his death. George isn't keen on helping, so he drops his card, saying he'll reconsider whenever he changes his mind. Nick finds Elias in the family's $1 million yacht and follows him to the mountainside, where he shows his mountain climbing skill without using a rope, even though his brother just died from the same predicament. Nick approaches him and introduces himself as an agent from the National Intelligence Service, explaining that before Leo died, he was one of the biggest shareholders in the company. Elias falls for the lies and follows him to a coffee shop. During the interrogation, Nick asks Elias if he and his brother were in good terms before his death, thinking that the police had already closed the case, but changes his mind and explains that he and his brother had a fight, just like every other family, and it wasn't that serious. When they were younger, their dad bought boxing gloves for them just to box each other, and he only had a huge quarrel 3 weeks ago. Other than that, he and his brother were in good terms. At that moment, Elias received a message on his phone telling him that Elias isn't who he said he's. So he left and warns him never to show his face around him again. George, on the other hand, was listening to their conversation. Nick finds him and begs for them to work together. After much persuasion, he finally agrees. After they both listen to the recorded conversation between Nick and Elias, Nick thinks Elias is hiding something from the voice. He seems to be jealous of something or someone. George doesn't quite agree, since Elias is a rich guy from a wealthy family. Nick then stumbles upon one of the pictures on George's board and he reveals that the guy is known as Giannis. He's a drug lord and also a good friend to Elias. So Nick decides to meet Penelope in the monastery and asks her about the relationship she has with Leo. She explains that back in college years at Oxford University, she got into the school through a scholarship and also worked as a waitress to support herself. That was when she first met Leo, who picked interest in her. At that moment, Nick is jolted back to his own life with his wife. One night, when coming back from work, he meets his wife all dressed up fine and sexy and tells her how grateful he is to finally be with someone like her, only to tell him that she's going out to meet someone. And when he asks his wife, she refuses to tell him who it was, and that was the first time Nick felt real jealous. Back in the present, Penelope gives him an address of where she first met with Leo during his investigation. He finds a headband, including some photos of the family, and a family friend who might have some information. Nick interrogates Victoria Lacôte, a family friend to the Vardakis family, about the night when the twin brothers had a fight at the bar. She says she only pours the drinks and doesn't know what transpired, but she explains that among the brothers, Leo was earning a salary from the family business while Elias was the CEO of the company, while the mother runs the whole show. Telling Nick further that Leo loves Penelope, but his brother Elias was the more confident one and would grab life by the balls. That's why he runs the company, and his crush on Leo was too scared and weak. That's why he'd been placed as a salary earner in his own father's company. Penelope drives Nick to the crime scene, where she shows him the hide and spot where they found the body of her brother-in-law. Nick is quite amazed at how he could climb the mountain with his bare hands without any life support, and Penelope explains that during the brothers' childhood, their dad always takes them on dangerous adventures, including hiking, and it has only become sports for the twin. Nick tells her about the meeting with Victoria, saying that the lady thinks Leo was murdered. To support her belief, Penelope takes us to the past during college life. It turns out that Elias knew Leo had a crush on her, so when he's not looking, Elias takes Leo's phone and texts Penelope to meet up so they could study together, and immediately deletes the text so his brother won't notice. Later, Elias goes in as Leo and approaches her, and she falls for it. Leo ends up doing the dirty with Penelope, When she's asked, she says she'd known it was Elias all along but chose to be quiet. After graduation, Leo ends up losing the love of his life to his twin brother. Not only that, Elias was also the favorite child of the family and also the CEO of the family's company, Uterus. This makes him really mad and angry. Nick wants to meet with the mother, Audrey, to see her reaction to what he has to say. Penelope hesitates a little before telling him that there would be a party at the yacht, and that would be an opportunity to meet with her. That night, Nick gets to be part of the event and meets with Audrey. He presents himself as a friend of Leo, making Audrey strike a conversation with him. Nick tells her about the rumor that his son Leo was murdered rather than an accident. Audrey gets sad and warns him not to interfere or dig into the family's problems. At that moment, Elias finds Nick talking to his mom and pushes him, saying he should leave the island or he gets thrown off the boat, making Nick very suspicious of Elias. The next day, George comes with sad news, saying that his superior has warned him to stay away from Nick, or he'll get deported back to Africa. Nick understands and tells him it's okay, and now he has to work alone. He goes to the bar to meet Victoria, only to find it closed and restricted. He has no choice but to start spying on the family and finds Elias taking some stash of cash. He follows him to a club, where he sees Elias dealing with Giannis. Unfortunately, he's spotted and gets beaten, and warned for the last time to leave the island or he'd be dead. Fortunately, George was present there and was able to carry him back to the monastery. The next morning, Nick meets with Penelope and tells her about his encounter last night. While investigating, he realized that for anyone to make it to the hiking mountain, one must use a boat, but doesn't know which boat or the rider. So he contacts George and asks him to help him for the last time, as he's close to finding Leo's killer. Nick requests the file containing the data of all the boats in the island, finding the ones on duty the day Leo died, and pinpoints a particular shipping boat. Next, the duo goes to the dock and finds the boat, only to be seen by Giannis' men. George quickly shoots, killing the man, only to be shot dead by Giannis. Nick quickly grabs his gun and engages with Giannis and kills him after a while. George goes home to mourn the death of his friend. While looking at the autopsy copy of the deceased, he finds an X-ray of the body with fractured bones. Realizing that something might be off about everything, he calls Penelope and tells her that he has found the truth about everything and tells her to keep an eye on Elias, making sure he doesn't leave the house, and to also be sure that Audrey is around to hear what he has to say. Upon reaching the house, Elias threatens to call the police, and Nick tells him that they are already on their way. In the meantime, Nick explains his investigations in details, stating that Elias is Leo all along, and he's only been acting as Elias. He killed his brother Elias so he can become him out of jealousy. To prove his point, Nick calls out the fact that Elias was the favorite of the parents, the CEO of the company, and also getting to keep his college crush as a wife. This drove him into jealousy and hatred towards his twin brother Elias, leading him to kill his only brother, so he can live his life. To add some salt to the pain, Nick reveals that during college, when Elias came to Penelope as Leo, she knew all along because of the way he approached her and was also really good in bed. Realizing that her son has been an imposter all along, Audrey points a gun at Leo and shoots, killing him at the spot. Audrey is arrested afterwards by the police for murder. After a job well done, Nick boards a plane back to New York, realizing a controversial statement made by Penelope. Nick quickly leaves the plane, takes a taxi to the yacht, where he finds Penelope all dressed up and looking fine. Nick, as a great investigator, was able to figure out that this whole situation was orchestrated by Penelope all this while. She explains that she wanted to be free, but her husband, Elias, wouldn't allow it, so in order to get rid of him, she had to work with his twin brother, Leo, who was desperate to become the CEO of the company. But after the deed was done, Leo ends up treating her like Elias, so she made up her mind to call a private investigator to reveal what happened, leaving Nick with some clues all along to quickly uncover the case. Nick commends her for outsmarting the men, and now she gets to live her life as the CEO of the company. Penelope asks Nick how he handled his own family problem, and Nick reveals that he almost wanted to kill his wife, but was drawn back by the sight of his little girl's face. To avoid the brawl with his wife, he traveled out of the country. The movie ends with Penelope taking Nick to one of the family's ferries to New York to meet his family. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe for more.